Hey guys, it's Kevin, and this is my review for 8th grade. And what 8th grade is basically about is we center on this character, Kayla Day. She is an incredibly insecure, anxiety-ridden teenager who is finishing off her last year of 8th grade, basically preparing to go into the high school world, and basically it's her last week of 8th grade, and basically we see her sort of deal with her insecurities, try to fit in with the high school crowd, and basically start to accept who she really is, and that's really all I'm gonna say. And I was absolutely hyped for this movie. I can't really express how much I was interested in this. I mean, coming-of-age films in general, especially as of late, have been so on point and so resonative and so well-written. I mean, Edge of 17, Boyhood, Lady Bird, Call Me By Your Name to an extent, Love, Simon. I mean, just so many great coming-of-age films out there, and this one looked like it was really going to be something special. It really was going to be something unlike all of the other films that I just mentioned, and that's absolutely what this is. 8th Grade is one of the most intimate films I think I've ever seen. It is very different from the other films I just mentioned, and we're just going to jump into all of that right now. Now, the first thing I really do have to get into is our main star here. Elsie Fisher in this movie is just phenomenal in this role. Now, prior to this, you probably just knew her as the little girl who played Agnes in the Despicable Me films, and in this film, she is here to prove she is much more capable than that. She blew me away in this movie. What I really love about Kayla Day is just how unextraordinary of a person she is. I mean, this is someone who is deeply insecure about herself. She stammers a lot. She's very bad socially. She has a lot of things just boggled up inside of her, and a lot of things that she is very embarrassed about. She has like acne on her face and things like that, and the way that Fisher portrays her is just so honest. She doesn't try to glamorize Kayla at all. She shows a very real portrayal of someone in Kayla's position, and I think honestly the way she portrays it just feels very relatable in that sense. There was a lot of things going on with her that I very much could relate to. I'll get to that in a little bit later, but I think Fisher just did such an incredible job in this film. She had me laughing at points, she had me crying at points, and she's just a very well-written character. One of the best I think I've seen in any of these coming-of-age films, and probably one of the most realistic portrayals I have seen ever, to be honest. She was just phenomenal here, and after this film, she's definitely a talent to watch out for sure. She was incredible. Now, everyone else in the film isn't really on Fisher's level, but I do still think everyone did a really great job, particularly Josh Hamilton as her father in this film. I really did love. Nothing extraordinary about him, but what I really loved about his part is, again, just how real he felt. He's so uncinematic in the sense where he just feels like a normal father. He's trying to deal with his daughter, who is always, just yelling at him, wants nothing to do with him, just finds him to be a joke, but he always tries to help her out. He's always trying to make her look at the positivity, and especially towards the end of this film, a scene that he has, I really think he did an incredible job. The bond between these two, I really did love. I just think he was so well casted here. Honestly, the two were so good that I really did feel like they were father and daughter, and it just felt, again, very real in that aspect, and I think they did a really great job with that here. And even the smaller roles in this film, while they don't have a ton to do, almost everyone really left an impact on me. Someone as small as, say, Kennedy, just the mean girl of the school, I thought was very good. Or someone like the weird kid that Kayla keeps coming in contact with, I really enjoyed here. This girl Olivia that shows up, that's like this high school senior that ends up helping Kayla out, I really loved. I just thought everyone was so well casted here. Nobody was really giving a performance in this film. Everything just felt like real conversations, and I think everyone just did an incredible job here. But now we really do have to get to the directing here, which I think, honestly, is a true triumph. I mean, just the fact that someone like Burnham, someone who is just a raunchy comedian who did a few skits on YouTube, he had an MTV show that I really enjoyed, the fact that he was able to craft something this endearing and this shockingly real, I think is just admirable, and just the pure craftsmanship he put into this is amazing. Because what I really loved about Burnham's directing is, again, nothing about it feels cinematic. The comedy in here doesn't feel forced at all. It is very awkward. It is very well-timed, but at the same time, it's not comedy that's just there because it's supposed to be this, relief. Like, the comedy's there for very good reason. And the comedy that's in there, yeah, this film is a lot of fun, and I think Burnham did a very good job with that. I mean, obviously, he knows how to do comedy very well. What I love about the comedy is that it never was coming from a mean-spirited place. It's never at the expense of Kayla. Kayla is a very awkward person, but the humor is more in the sense that it's very relatable in the way that she'll stammer her words, or the way that she approaches people. She's very bad at it, and it's very fun to watch because you can remember, oh, we were like Kayla once, but we're never laughing at her in that sense, and I think he did a very good job with that. But what particularly impressed me was the just nuance that this film really did have. I mean, this film is very complex, yet it's really not complex at all. And that's more in terms of the writing, which we'll get to very soon, but I think the dramatic stuff in this film is very well done. I mean, like I said, Kayla's just a very awkward person, but you really do get invested in her life, what she's really going through, her insecurities. I mean, they really have consumed her. They've basically had an effect on her entire well-being, and we really do see that here. And because of the fact that they don't try to, they don't try to throw all this stuff at you, the dramatic moments feel that much more well-earned, and I think that the tone is just very well balanced in that regard. But the writing is really what I want to talk about, because this is easily, I think, the best screenplay that I have seen all year. What's so great about 8th Grade that immediately divorces it from Lady Bird and things like that, because yes, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to that film, unfortunately, but the thing that makes this film so different from all the other coming-of-age films I just mentioned is two things. One, unlike those films, this is her entire last week of 8th grade. That's it. It centers on 1 week. Not a month, not a year, 1 week. And I've never really seen a film do that of this kind. Usually it's a year, a couple weeks, but never a week. And this entire film, things happen over a week. Also, there virtually isn't really a plot here, despite the fact that we do have her going through 8th grade. The film isn't really complex in terms of a story, and I think that really is actually its biggest strength, because of the fact that it's not very complex and there isn't a lot going on story-wise. The character moments, the quieter stuff, feels that much more satisfying. You are that much more invested in it because the whole film is basically relying on just Kayla's character, and it's exploring her anxieties. And there rarely is a point in this movie, in fact, I can't really recall one, where it isn't centered on Kayla as a character, and I think the writing is just so sharp there. Her insecurities, I mean, that's stuff that I very much can relate to throughout both middle school and high school for sure. I'm not really going to get into that. I mean, what I went through, it's a bit different than what Kayla's going through, but I'm pretty sure there's, even if you weren't like Kayla, there's gonna be at least one thing in this film that you can relate to, because this film is shockingly relevant. And when I mean shockingly relevant, I mean it feels like I literally walked to a middle school, observed a few kids hanging out, and that was somehow in this movie. It doesn't feel like a movie. The stuff that the characters say, it just feels very natural in that sense. And I've seen this in things like Lady Bird and, Edge of 17. I think those two films especially have handled it very well, but there's just something about this one that just feels so real and just feels so natural that while the other films did have it, there was a certain cinematic quality to them, and this one, it's just not really there. It just feels like real life, and you feel like you're watching just real people, and they do such an incredible job with that. Conversations that she would have, especially with this character of Aiden, this boy that she's head over heels for in the film, just felt very, it honestly did take me back. Like, the things that they were talking about, I'm like, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, I remember things like this coming up. Yeah, I was definitely in Kayla's position at this time. I mean, there was so many things that I could relate to, and they did such an incredible job. And I'm not just trying to say that it's going to be relatable for me. I think, like I said, it really is going to have something for everyone, because the film really touches upon, you know, how not just a middle schooler views high school, but how, you know, how someone in her position views the world in general. Her relationship with her father, the way her father tries to be, you know, a good father to her, even when it might be difficult to. The way that high schoolers might even, you know, view someone like Kayla, who is an 8th grader. I mean, there's a lot of stuff this film dives into that I didn't even expect it to, and they did such a great job with that here. But just because there isn't much of a story, that's not to say there isn't stuff going on in this film, because there absolutely is. I mean, Kayla, she's going through a lot of stuff in this movie. Like I said, there's a boy that she likes. She's trying to hang out with friends. I mean, she really doesn't have much of anyone. She spends a lot of the film alone, in complete solitude, just scrolling through things on her computer. And again, just the way this film was so intimate in that sense, I think was very ballsy. It could have easily gotten very boring, but again, because of how much we connect with this character and we can relate to her situation, it really is that much more investing, and I really do give Burnham credit for doing that. You know, you'd think he would try to go all out, and he'd try to make this huge film, but the fact that it was so small, I think really does benefit it a lot. And like I said, the film also is very funny. There's a lot of things here that, just comedy-wise, was very relatable. There is one recurring joke in this film at an assembly, and this one thing that this one character said, it's very brief, but yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I went to an assembly in middle school and high school, and people were just, like, making fun of it, and nobody was really taking it seriously. But this film takes that to another level, and I really loved it. I mean, there's so many great things like that, and the thing is, the film is so modern that some might find it outdated, for sure, but I think that, honestly, is one of the things that makes it so great, because I said this in my written review, and I'm going to say it again here. I think this film in general really is the film that is going to define this generation best. I mean, the whole film, there's so much talk about technology. There's so many scenes where just characters looking down and not paying attention to what Kayla is saying. Kayla, you know, she has a YouTube channel. She has a Snapchat. There's a whole scene about, like, there's a whole subplot about Instagram and things like that. And again, for some, that might get a little annoying. But for me, I think it worked very well, because it's a film that when we look back years from now, we're going to look at it as like, oh yeah, remember when that was the thing? Remember when that was out? I don't think it's going to be outdated at all. It includes all this stuff that this generation does, and I think that makes it that much more timely. And you know, you look at something like The Breakfast Club, or something like even Boyhood, and there are a lot of things that in that time period were very current, and the reason they're not outdated is because we look at it as a sum of its time, but we also look at its story, and its story here definitely, I think, is going to stay relevant. It is going to stay just as important. So even though there's a lot of stuff going on with technology in this film, I still think for many it will stay just as relevant and just as poignant as it does now. Now, like I said, this film is very shockingly real. It's very raw in that sense. It's not afraid to get into some really heavy stuff. Particularly one scene in the film, though, I can see bothering some people, and it involves this shift when Kayla goes to hang out with these high schoolers, and it's very well done. I personally really loved it, but I can see how some people might feel it is a little too much. But for me, I think it works because, again, everything that this film is covering does in fact happen in middle school and high school. There's really nothing going on in this film that I can't see not happening. There's nothing here that doesn't seem somewhat feasible to what's actually going on, and I think they just did that so well. And again, especially with this scene, which, like I said, might make some viewers very uncomfortable, I think they honestly needed it. I think they needed to cover this. I think it needed to be in here, and I think if you removed it, the film would feel like it's trying to shelter kids from, you know, these certain topics, and I'm glad that this film really didn't do that. It was very honest in that way, and that's something else that I really loved about it. And going back to that, I also love how Kayla is not this amazing girl. She's not someone who is a cheerleader. She's not someone who has a ton of friends. This is a normal, very awkward girl that is very just bad at making conversation. And even the smallest things like the acne on her face, I mean, we just don't really see that a lot. It's very unrepresented in any coming-of-age story, and again, I just loved how real Burnham really went into this. You really did feel like he understood what a teenage girl really does go through. You honestly forget this is being written by like a 20-something-year-old and not a middle schooler, because it just feels so real in that sense, and he did such a great job with getting us into the mindset of her character overall. And throughout the film, there were so many things with Kayla that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to relate to. Not just her deep insecurities and her anxiety in general, but the way that she presents herself. You know, throughout a lot of this film, she is trying so hard to be the cool girl, the girl that has it all, the girl that's experienced, the girl that has all these friends. She will often make YouTube videos on life advice and basically as a way of giving advice to herself. And there's a great scene where she's talking about this girl that she invited to this pool party, and it was probably one of the most emotional scenes I've seen all year. Just the way that scene was done, I thought was very well handled, and especially what she was talking about, I just thought resonated very well, because again, this is kind of like a coping mechanism for Kayla, and the way she tries to kind of mask it under the guise of someone who does have a life, who is very experienced, who does have a very good social life, I just thought was really compelling. And again, I think for many people are going to be able to relate that a lot. I can think of many individuals in general who have done this, where they act like something they're not, and this film very well does show how that is the wrong thing to do, but I'm glad that we had a character that was this insecure, and I think that was very well done here. Also, another reason this film is very relatable is the characters that this film really does give us. Like I said, even though we don't get a lot of insight into them, we all knew someone like Kennedy, the girl who thought she was on top of the world, was very bitchy to everyone else. You know, she thought everyone was like inferior to her. We all knew someone like Aiden, just sort of like the horny middle schooler who really only looked at girls in a physical way. He didn't really care about their emotional attributes and things like that. You know, we all knew someone like these characters. In fact, we all even knew Kayla. A lot of us probably ignored Kayla, and this movie does make us feel very bad for those who did ignore Kayla, and I think that's something that Bo Burnham just did a really great job with. Again, it just makes you forget who really is writing this film. He really just gave us a very deep look at middle schoolers, and once again, even if some of the technological stuff is a bit outdated, that's another reason why I don't think this film is ever going to age, because there always will be Kennedys and Aidens and Kayla, and even Kayla's fathers out there. There's always going to be people like that. There's going to be Olivia's out there who are very welcoming towards Kayla and, you know, accept her equally and things like that. There are going to be people like the principal in this movie who tries to be this hip guy trying to appeal to, you know, a younger generation standards. There are so many characters like that in this film, and I think that's another thing this film just understood so well. In terms of this film's visual style, it is some of the most stunning I have seen all year. I mean, just little scenes like this montage of her scrolling through her Instagram and opening all these various accounts of people that she'd like to be friends with, but she's simply just too shy and, you know, just just too scared to really put herself out there. It's just very effective. Or little scenes like her playing the cymbals at her high school, or at her middle school, and not being, and being very unconfident about that. I mean, just little things here and there. The film does a very good job in its opening moments of really just getting us to know her through little visual cues. The way she'll open up her box and she'll see this time capsule of all these different things that she put in there when she was in 6th grade, thinking that she'd change, and then she opens it up and she doesn't really feel anything different. I just thought things like that were very effective, and there's a lot of great visual scenes like that in the film, and just little things like, how, like I said, this film is very much her perspective, and there are so many things where if Kayla doesn't see it, we don't see it. Like her father talking to her for some reason. This is more of an audio thing, but it is visual as well. We all know that scene in the trailer where her father's talking to her and she just sticks headphones in her ears. I mean, just stuff like that. It was just so resonative, and definitely did strike a chord with me. I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all done that, where we've just been like, leave me alone, I just want to listen to my music, and I just really loved scenes like that here. And the score to this film is probably one of my favorites of the entire year. It's got a really nice, like, electronic, sort of, like, jazzy score to it, and especially this one scene at a pool party that Kayla is at, I thought was extremely effective. I mean, it's kind of like this over-the-top sort of circus score, and the way it's done, I just, the way everything is crafted there, I just thought the score was so well done. But even some visual cues in the film, like, for example, when Kayla takes headphones out of her ears, we don't hear the music anymore. I mean, we just don't really see that a lot. And again, it's not really anything that big, but it's just something I thought was really well done. And again, it just shows how intimate this film really is. We are with this character pretty much 24/7, and there's rarely a point where we really do deviate away from her, and I really have not seen a film done something like that in quite some time. Also, the way this film ends, without really getting into it, while it might not be the best ending of the year, it's for sure the most satisfying. I mean, I did not expect it to go where it really does, but I thought it was incredibly satisfying. It really did feel like we went on a journey with this character, and just the way the scene plays out, coupled with the monologue that we have from her at the end, I just thought was so powerful. And if that doesn't leave some sort of impact on you, the last few words that Kayla says in this film, in this video that she's making, then I really don't know. I will be very surprised if it didn't leave some sort of impact on you, because I thought that speech was incredibly hard-hitting. I thought it was just very resonative in that sense, and just perfectly puts you, again, into the perspective of someone who is an 8th grader, and someone who really is going through all the insecurities that Kayla is, and is moving up to high school, and I think they just did that so well here. So overall, guys, 8th Grade is one of the most intimate and masterful coming-of-age films I think I've ever seen. It's wholly original in the sense that it really takes place over 1 week. Nothing about it really feels like a movie. The whole thing really feels like you're just watching this girl's life and seeing things through her eyes. And while, again, it doesn't really have much of a plot, it's riveting because we understand Kayla's struggles. We see what she's going through. We're constantly on her side throughout the film, but at the same time, there are things where you're like, no, Kayla, why would you do this? And you see it is very awkward. It's not afraid to get really cringy at points. It's not afraid to get really it's not afraid to get kind of uncomfortable, and that's something I really did admire about this film. It's not a film that's just everything is so happy. There are some low points in this film, and like I said, for some it might make them too uncomfortable, but for me, I really loved everything this film did cover. I think it always had its heart in the right place. It has a very good message of just accepting your flaws and not letting them consume you, and basically, anyone that doesn't accept them, just don't listen to them or whatever. And again, that's a message we've seen in other films, but this film does it in a way where it does feel original. The way the YouTube is incorporated just feels so seamless. The way that the comedy is done, just everything about this film, it just is one of the most well put together, I think, directorial debuts I've seen in a long time. I am very interested in seeing what Bo Burnham really does do from here. I could have never seen him doing something like this years ago, but I am very happy that he did, because he has really cemented himself as someone who can make some really great coming-of-age films, and I can't wait to see really what he does do next. Like I said, I really do think this is a film that is going to define this generation overall. I think at the end of, you know, this millennium, century, whatever you want to call it, when we look back on films, I think this is definitely one we're going to go back to. I think this is a film that really everyone does need to see, even if you're not in 8th grade and you weren't, you know, you're not a woman, that does not matter. There are so many things to admire about this film. There are so many things I'd love to get into, but again, it's a film that I just need you to go out and see. Support this film, because this is definitely a film that I for sure loved. It's one of the best of the year for sure. It had such a huge impact on me, and it is definitely one of the best coming-of-age films I think I've ever seen, and I am for sure going to give 8th grade overall an A+. Definitely check this one out as soon as you can, guys. It is, I believe, going wide this week, so definitely check it out whenever it comes near you. Like I said, for some, there are things that might bother them, but for me, I really think this film was as good as it really could have been. But that's really it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought this movie overall, leave your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.